Hello everyone, welcome to Chat UTD. This is the latest video in a series of videos. I'm going to do profiling the managers that are being tipped to replace Erik ten Hag. This one's quite controversial. Gareth Southgate. The idea of Southgate managing United has been met with widespread disgust amongst the United fan base. I wouldn't even say the fan base is split, it's just point blank, don't want to have him as United's manager. Nor do I. I think some of the criticism of him has been unfair. I think some of it is personal. I think some of it is based on a narrative that's been created without any substance to it, which often happens in the media. Happens. United are the victims of it at times as well. And I just want to kind of break down Southgate's career and look at why I don't think it's as outlandish as some people are making out. I'm going to have to do something a bit different in order to make this make sense, because in order to dispel some of the myths that are out there regarding Southgate, it's important to look at a little bit of history to do with England. So it's a bit of a different video to maybe what I've done before. Okay, so the general consensus around Southgate is that he's a really poor manager, that I keep hearing that he's not done a particularly good job with England, and that he's got a group of world-class players that really, they should be winning tournaments. Anyone could almost anybody could get them to the latter stages of tournaments. It doesn't take a good manager to do it. That's the narrative that's out there. And I saw Steve Howson profile him a couple of weeks ago. He was incredibly cutting of Southgate and of Southgate's time in charge of England. I saw a fella on Twitter who I quite like most of the time, detailing each tournament that Southgate's overseen with England, and next to it wrote in capital letters, bottled it, bottled it, bottled it. And these are the things that I want to just kind of dispute, whilst maintaining that I don't want him to be United's manager. So let's look at the bottled it section of what I just mentioned. So England are a national team that has no history of success whatsoever. It has high expectations and low achievement. England have won one major trophy in their history, and it was nearly 60 years ago. It's 58 years since we won the World Cup in 1966. It took until 1990, 24 years later, before they even got to another semi-final of a major tournament. I'm going to go through the tournaments from me being a kid until Southgate took over. And if we are saying that what Southgate has overseen is not very good and that he bottles it, I just want to try and see if you can spot a theme here with England down the years. I kind of remember Euro 88, but I didn't know enough about football to give a proper critique of it, so I'm not going to include that. So let's go to 1990, Italia 90. The group stage, England played a very basic Republic of Ireland team and drew 1-1. We drew 0-0 against a good Holland team, which was a good result, and we scraped past Egypt, who were a very average team, 1-0, which saw England through to the next round. In the next round, they played Belgium. It's important to remember Belgium were not the Belgium of today. They were quite, again, an average team. It took the last kick of extra time to avoid going to penalties, and England won 1-0. In the quarterfinals, they played Cameroon, who were the plucky minnows, who'd done very well. Two pretty dodgy penalties for Gary Lineker saw us win 3-2. I can't remember if that took extra time, but it was certainly a close game. It was 3-2 and England scraped through. The semi-final, Germany, first real proper team we played in the tournament. If we're going to use the language that's been used about Southgate, bottled it. Lost on penalties. Now that isn't the way it's remembered, but if we're being fair, then the only good team England played in that tournament, they lost against. And they had a big opportunity and they didn't take it. Bobby Robson is revered by fans all around the world, but particularly fans of England. Nobody remembers that 1990 tournament as them bottling it. But if we're being fair, we have to categorise it that way. Euro 92, I'm kind of not including, because Graham Taylor, God bless him, rest his soul, should never have been the England manager. And we got what we deserved in that tournament. England were poor from 1990 until not qualifying for 94 in the World Cup. There, it was almost like a dead end 6 years for England, pretty much. So let's go to Euro 96. Terry Venables, again, amongst England fans, revered for the achievement, inverted commas, of getting to a semi-final. So let's look at that tournament. First game, Switzerland, pretty poor team, drew 1-1, stunk the place out, rubbish. Played a very poor Scotland team and won 2-0, but it all hinged on one moment where they missed a penalty and Gaza went up the other end and did his piece of magic to win 2-0. So scraped past Scotland. The Holland game is an anomaly. It's probably one of the best England performances I've ever seen. And we beat them 4-1 and it was phenomenal. And Holland were a much fancied team, although they don't think they qualify for the next round. Did they? Or maybe they did. Anyway, Spain in the knockout round, not the Spain of today. Quite a decent Spain team, but nothing to write home about. Drew 0-0, went to penalties, got through. So you could say again, semi-final, Germany, the opportunity to go and take ourselves to the final. Shearer scores early doors. We're 1-0 up. The crowd are rocking. We're on top. It goes to penalties. We lose. Bottled it. Again, that's not the way it was remembered. It's not the way it's remembered. But we can't rewrite history. If we're judging Southgate, and I'll come to him a bit later, we have to judge those other people on the same sort of standards. 98 World Cup. People talk about Southgate having a world-class squad. That squad had, remember Newcastle at the time were a very good team. They had Newcastle's best players, a couple of decent young players from Chelsea. Arsenal had some really good players at that time. They just won the double. And the bulk of United's academy treble-winning team had come through and were in that England team as well. So, was it world-class? Maybe not, but I tell you what, it was probably as good as the squad that they've got now. So World Cup 98, beat Tunisia 2-0 standard, lost against the average Romania team, beat an average Colombia team, so got through. Played Argentina in the knockout stages, bottled it. Again, first proper team they played, lost. Euro 2000, Portugal, first game, 2-0 up, lost 3-2, bottled it. Beat Germany, 1-0. Not a particularly good Germany team, but still beat Germany, a great night, I remember it very well. Third game, Romania, only needed a draw to get past a pretty average Romania team, lost, bottled it, out. 2002, Sven-Göran Eriksson, the start of what was known as the golden generation. Ashley Cole, hated him, but world-class left-back. Rio Ferdinand, world-class centre-back. Sol Campbell, world-class centre-back. David Beckham, world-class. Michael Owen at the time, probably just about world-class. So, if we're talking world-class, certainly more players in that team than there are now that were world-class. Let's look at the tournament. First game, average Sweden team, drew 1-1, if I remember rightly, having gone in front. Beat Argentina with the penalty, and then drew 0-0 against Nigeria. So got through with 5 points. Knockout round, played Denmark. Average Denmark team, won 3-0. First really top team we played was Brazil in the quarterfinals. I think went a goal up, if I remember rightly. Bottled it. Whew. Can you see a theme here? 2004, you bring Rooney into the mix. Raw, at his best, late teens, animal, street fighting Wayne Rooney. On top of Ashley Cole. Now you throw John Terry in there as well. Rio Ferdinand, Sol Campbell, Gary Neville, Paul Scholes, Steven Gerrard, hate to say it, he was world class. Frank Lampard at the time, world class. David Beckham, world class. So, a very good squad. Won 2 games in the group against Croatia and Switzerland, lost against a good team in the group, France. Got to Portugal in the quarterfinals, bottled it. 2006, by this point, that's the maturation of the golden generation. First game, Paraguay, rubbish game, won by a freak set piece, 1-0, awful. Trinidad and Tobago, who are probably the equivalent of a League 1 or League 2 team, won 2-0, scraped past them, we were rubbish. Third game, Sweden, who were probably the only half-decent team in the group, drew that game. Beat, if I remember rightly, Ecuador in the knockout game, 1-0. I think it took extra time, really poor. but got through. Quarterfinals, Portugal again, penalties, bottled it. 2000, didn't even get there in 2008. So 2010 is the next one, World Cup, one of the worst World Cups I've ever seen. Fabio Capello as the manager, one of the most, respected managers in modern history, I'd say, in terms of his club career. Still the remnants of the golden generation there. Drew against America, drew against Algeria, beat, I think it was Slovenia, or it might have been Slovakia 1-0, fluked it, were rubbish in that game. Played Germany, again the only decent team that we played in that tournament, got beat 4-1, bottled it. 2012, Euro 2012, Roy Hodgson, the manager, obviously didn't give you much of a chance. Not as good a squad, I have to say, but still beat Ukraine and Sweden and lost against France in the group. Against the only decent team we played, we lost against, got to the quarterfinals against Italy, bottled it. 2014, didn't even get out of the group. Bottled it against Italy, bottled it against Uruguay. Played Costa Rica in the final game, but it was irrelevant because we were already out, so didn't even get out of the group stage. 2016, Euro 2016, we played, I can't remember who played in the group, a couple of rubbish teams, got through an easy group, bottled it against Iceland. So that takes us to 2018 and the tournament where we got to the semi-finals under Gareth Southgate. So I've just gone over there nearly 30 years of tournaments where there is a very strong theme of just scraping by against average teams, and as soon as we come up against anyone decent, often with England there's a hard luck story, there's a sending off, there's a decision that goes against us, but essentially losing against the first decent team that we play against. So let's take it to 2018. Now I'm told by the general consensus that Southgate, how did we not win that World Cup? Nobody expected England to get anywhere near the semi-finals. I remember it. I remember that summer. I remember everyone that wants England to do well, and I'm one of those people. Absolutely great weather, out in the garden watching the football, and beer gardens watching the football, beers going everywhere, loads of videos of it. Just go on YouTube. Nobody expected England to get to the semi-final that year. That squad had Phil Jones, Jamie Vardy, Ashley Young, Gary Cahill, Jesse Lingard. I could name quite a few more if I had it in front of me, but basically bang average players. The only player that was even close to world class, and he's not world class, is Harry Kane in that squad. And we got to the semi-finals, and it followed the same pattern that all of those other tournaments I just spoke to you about followed. So, first game, who did we play in the first game? Was it Tunisia? I think it was Tunisia. And we scraped by 2-1. We scored a late goal. Played pretty well, but scraped by, got a 2-1 win. I think it was Tunisia. The second game was Peru, which, again, no disrespect to them. That's like a League One team. We won 6-0 or something like that. It was a good performance. The third game was Belgium, who were a good team, the best team in the group. We didn't need to win because we'd already gone through. Southgate picked a completely different 11 and we lost 1-0, I think, if I remember rightly. The knockout game, we beat Colombia on penalties. Then we beat Sweden comfortably, 2-0 in the quarter-final. Then we got to Croatia, went a goal up, obviously, and lost in extra time, I think. And people go, it's Croatia, you never have a better chance to get to a final. I agree, I was gutted at the time. But in the same respect, that team was nowhere near ready to reach a final. It wasn't good enough. And Croatia had a team that had been together for a long time, the likes of Modric, really streetwise defenders who play all across Europe, Mandzukic up front, no mugs. But, so if that's bottling it, then, as I say, you have to hark back to 96 and say, well, Venables bottled it, Bobby Robson bottled it. Those squads, for me, were far better than the squad that we had in 2018. The 2020 Euros, which obviously was postponed because of COVID, so it was played in 2021, we reached the final. Again, people talk about world-class players. England had world-class players. Who? Who are you talking about? There isn't any world-class players in that squad. Declan Rice, even now, isn't world-class. Harry Kane isn't world-class. So who are we talking about? Because Bellingham was a kid at that then and had barely played. So, again, that tournament, it's much the same. It's the same theme. We played, I think we played Croatia in the first game we won. We drew against Scotland in a terrible game, which England historically tend to have an awful group game against a poor team where you're like, what are they doing? Awful game. I think it was 0-0, and then beat, I can't remember who they beat in the last game of the group, against the Czech Republic, I think it was. Then the first knockout round we beat Germany. Not a good Germany team, but still we beat Germany. In the quarterfinals we beat Ukraine away from home 4-0. England don't go anywhere in a quarterfinal and win 4-0. Semi-final we came from behind to beat Denmark, and in the final we played Italy and went 1-0 up, which again is a theme, going 1-0 up early, everyone's euphoric, and we end up getting drawn back into a game. Game management wasn't brilliant, we lose on penalties. But the two veteran centre-backs and the players that Italy had, they'd have given anyone a game. So it's not a disgrace to lose to Italy on penalties. It's not bottling it, it's just not being good enough. And it's indoctrinated, conditioned failure. And that's what England have. Fast forward to the World Cup nearly 2 years ago now. No one fancied us. People can say, oh, they bottled it. No one fancied England going into the World Cup. We're in terrible form. I think Hungary beat us 4-0 at home just before it. And if you're talking about world-class players, the only world-class player England have got is Bellingham. No one else is world-class in that team. So, again, first game, we played someone, I think it was Iran, and we annihilated them. Drew against the USA, it was really poor. Did we draw against USA? Yeah, I think we drew against USA. Did we beat Wales? I think we did. And then the knockout round was Senegal, who I believe might have been African champions at the time, and we beat them comfortably. It was a really good performance. And then the next round was France. And the referee needed investigating. He was so bad against France. And Harry Kane missed a penalty. That's not Gareth Southgate bottling it. That's other circumstances coming in and playing the best team in the world. Argentina won it, but France were the best team in the world. And as Gary Neville said at the end of that game, England controlled the game. He said, we've just watched an England team control the game against France. So I'm hearing even now that if England don't win the Euro, if England win the Euros this summer, it's not even on Southgate. He shouldn't even get any credit for it. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not having that. Like, the team isn't full of world-class players. Is Jordan Pickford world-class? Good God, no. Kyle Walker, no. John Stones, no. Harry Maguire, no. Luke Shaw, no. Declan Rice, close but not quite. Who else have we got in midfield? Bellingham, yes. Mainu, if he plays, no. Of course not. He's not there yet. Foden, close. Harry Kane, no. Marcus Rashford. Marcus Rashford's not even Premier League class. Saka, no. So there's good players in there, but they're not world class. So what Gareth Southgate has done for 2018 until now, in terms of the tournaments, is far better than any other England manager since Alf Ramsey. Far better than any England manager in my lifetime. And you can say that they played poor teams, the team's full of world-class players. Well, no, it's not. That narrative needs to stop, because it isn't. But the first point of playing average teams and getting past them, scraping past them, and then whenever we play anyone decent, we lose, that's England. That happens. And part of that is Southgate. Of course, you've got to take responsibility, but you can't say he's been a failure for England when he's done better than any other manager than Alf Ramsey. That's just nonsense. I'm not having it. And I think the stuff that's said about him is disrespectful. And probably the reason I feel a bit passionately about this is, and I'm not ashamed to say it, I support Man United, but I am an England fan. I'm from England. I don't like sections of England's fan base. And over the years, I've not liked some of the players, particularly when Gerrard and people like that were playing for them. But I'm English. Of course I want England to do well. I want England to do well at cricket. I want England to do well at rugby. I want England to do well at football. I want Britain to do well in the Olympics. There's nothing wrong with that. So I think you'll find that outside of United and Liverpool fans who historically don't really like England too much, genuine England fans, the vast majority of them hold Southgate in quite high esteem, not because he's a fantastic manager, but because he's overseen something that no one else has seen for nearly 60 years. And the other thing he's done is made England attractive to play for again. It's not particularly great to watch at times, but you've got, let's just go with the world-class thing then. They haven't got world-class players, but let's say top-class, /world-class players, Bellingham's the only one, they want to go and play for England. the golden generation who I touched on before, they didn't really want to go and play for England. They did because they had to, pretty much, but none of them were passionate about it. You could see that. So he's created a club identity within the national team. That doesn't give him the credentials to manage Man United. He hasn't got the credentials to manage Man United, but it gives him the credentials to not be disrespected. And I think the way that the way that United fans have responded to the links to Southgate is like we've been linked to AD Boothroyd. In fact, I think some United fans would prefer AD Boothroyd to be the next manager than Gareth Southgate. And I just think it's based on an anti-England bias. It's based on a narrative that's been fed out there that's not really been checked. And the two key things are the world-class players comment isn't true, and the fact that they've kind of meandered by hook or by crook through tournaments and got to the latter stages, not because they're very good, just because they got good draws, and then when they played anyone decent, they lost. That's what England have done for the last nearly 40 years in tournaments. And Southgate's got them much further than anybody else. So for me, if Southgate wins the Euros, and I don't think we will win the Euros, but if we win the Euros, then he deserves to be in the same conversation as Sir Alf Ramsey. He already deserves to be in the same conversation as Bobby Robson because he's done better than him. And he deserves to be in the same conversation as Terry Venables because he's done better than him. Is he a better manager than those 2 or 3 people? Probably not. But the proof's in the pudding. He's done what was needed to be done better than what they did. So why then, you might ask, why don't you want to be United's manager? Because managing England and managing United are 2 completely different things. His in-game management isn't the best. His tactics are negative. He has no pedigree in club management. I don't particularly like his personality. And Ineos said that the people at the top of the club are going to be the ones that set the tone in terms of how we play. Well, Gareth Southgate, to me, doesn't look a particularly adaptable manager. He doesn't look like if you said to him, right, Gareth, we're going to play 4-4-2 and go with flying wingers, and we want basically just one holding and everyone else goes for it and plays swashbuckling, phenomenal football where we create chance after chance after chance. I don't think he could do that. Maybe Ineos don't want that. Maybe they want a pragmatic, boring approach that gets you 1-0, 2-1 wins and scrapes past teams. And then when you play good teams, you've got no way past them. But that's just basically Jose Mourinho. So I don't know why they would want him. I would actually say Erik ten Hag is probably a more he's being stubborn at the moment, but I think if you give him the tools, he could be a much more adaptable manager than Gareth Southgate. If you said to him, "This is the football we want you to play, Eric," I think he's showed already at Ajax he played a style of football. In his first season at United, when he did really well, he played a completely different style of football that was just winning football. That's probably a bigger conversation, really. Scholes, he said a while ago when they asked what was Ferguson's style of football, he said winning football. We get caught up in high press, Gengen pressing, whatever it's called, tiki-taka, low blocks, I want to see United win and play decent football. Maybe that's too simplistic, but if you ask me who's more likely to be able to do that if you give them the right tools, Erik ten Hag or Gareth Southgate, I'd say Erik ten Hag every day of the week. So that's why I don't want him to be United's manager, but I just think I wanted to put the record straight on the disrespect, and people will either like that video or not, and they might find it long-winded and boring. If you did, you're probably switched off, so you're not listening now. But I just feel that to get the context of why the arguments that are so strong against Southgate are maybe not correct, we have to look into the past to kind of give us the evidence as to whether those arguments are true or not. And for me, they're not. It still doesn't mean he should be United's manager. So, for me, no. But I don't think we need the pantomime disrespect of everyone boos him and hates him. And I've seen people say, I think Mark Goldbridge said he'd shut down the United stand if he became the manager. No, he wouldn't. You know what the other thing, and I'm just going to have to make this point before I go, is that top Reds out there, and they're the ones that are going, Southgate, okay, now, because top Reds tend to hate England. If he became our manager, let me tell you, within 3 days, you'd all have your nose firmly up his rear end, because that's what top Reds do. They haven't had the appetite to remove cretinous owners that we've got who've killed the club and brought it to its knees over 19 years, they haven't even got the appetite to fight against them and cause mutiny against them. So there's no way they're causing mutiny against Gareth Southgate or anyone else that United put in charge. Within a week, I guarantee you'll get people who previously were absolutely slagging him off saying, well, actually, I can see the benefits of it now. He's a pretty steady Eddie. I can see if you put this in place around him, he might be all right. Gareth Southgate's red and white army. Guaranteed. And that would be the same if it was Graham Potter. It'd be the same if it was De Zerbi, whoever it would be. And we've seen it with David Moyes. David Moyes was not the right manager to replace Sir Alex Ferguson. And no one should have been booing him or anything like that. The guy's trying to do his job. I'm not saying we should. But what I'm saying is there's hypocrites out there who are at the moment vitriolic in their absolute disgust that Gareth Southgate could be United's manager. But you watch them change. Like I said, United fans they're a big problem in some respects, in that they never follow through with a grievance. They don't protest against things that are wholly wrong, like the people that own the club. They ain't got the appetite for it. So they're not going to do it against Gareth Southgate. So for all this furore around it, if he became the manager, everyone would get behind him, because they'd have to. Well, they don't have to, but they would. So there you have it. Meandering, long, hopefully not boring. Glazers out.